Ankita Bhandari walked into the Horizon Resort with dreams of a brighter future. Viraj Khurana, the powerful owner, ruled the place like his kingdom, while his loyal manager, Rahil Deshmukh, ensured no secrets ever escaped. When Ankita vanished one night, Inspector Kunal Rathore uncovered a chilling trail leading to Samar, Vedant, and Imran Qureshi, revealing a murder that shook the entire nation. The Horizon Resort stood in the middle of Uttarakhand's lush valleys, surrounded by thick forests and a river that sparkled under the sun. Tourists came from all over India, drawn by the promise of calm evenings, fresh air, and a break from the chaos of the cities. To outsiders, it looked like paradise, but inside, behind the perfectly polished image, things were not as serene as they seemed. The staff worked long hours, always smiling for guests, but many carried silent fears. The most promising among them was a young woman named Ankita Bhandari. She had come to the resort full of hope, believing that this job could be her first step toward a better life. Ankita was ambitious yet soft-spoken, and though she hid it well, she carried the weight of her family's expectations on her shoulders. Ankita's routine was simple. She managed small tasks, assisted with guest services, and was often praised for her dedication. But she also noticed things that unsettled her. The resort was owned by Viraj Khurana, a man who had wealth, influence, and a public image that many admired. On the surface, he was the ideal businessman, always dressed immaculately, speaking with confidence, and promising opportunities to the people who worked for him. Yet there were whispers among the employees. They spoke quietly about late-night gatherings, where select workers were summoned, about demands that had little to do with the hospitality business, and about Viraj's ability to make problems vanish if anyone resisted. Viraj's closest ally at the resort was the manager, Rahil Deshmukh. He was sharp, calculating, and completely loyal to his employer. Rahil was the one who kept things in order, ensuring that Viraj's reputation remained spotless. He often reminded staff that loyalty was rewarded, while disobedience was punished. For Ankita, his presence was a constant reminder that this was not just a job, it was a place where she had to watch every step. Though Rahil's tone was polite in front of guests, his eyes told a different story when speaking to the staff. The other workers kept to themselves, often avoiding questions and refusing to speak openly about what they had seen or heard. Ankita began to sense that there was something deeply wrong about the environment she was in. Guests praised the peaceful views and the sparkling water of the river, but Ankita knew there were shadows that lingered after the sun went down. She tried to focus on her duties, believing that staying quiet and working hard would protect her. But in her heart she carried unease, and in her private diary, she sometimes wrote about her discomfort with the strange atmosphere of the resort. Despite these doubts, Ankita dreamed of a brighter future. She imagined saving enough to move to a bigger city, perhaps Delhi or Mumbai, where opportunities were endless. Her parents believed in her, often reminding her how proud they were. These dreams gave her strength, but they also made her vulnerable, because she could not afford to lose the job, no matter how unsettling things became. The Horizon Resort itself seemed to mirror the people who ran it. In the daylight, it was beautiful, lively, and full of charm. At night, it transformed into something else entirely. Behind closed doors, the powerful decided what would happen, and those who resisted faced consequences that no one dared to speak of. Ankita was beginning to realize that working there meant walking a thin line between obedience and survival. Guests who visited would never have guessed that a quiet storm was gathering beneath the surface. They lounged by the pool, sipped drinks, and took photographs of sunsets over the hills, unaware that one of the resort's own was slowly being pulled into a dangerous web. Ankita, with her hopes and fears, had no idea that her life was moving toward a turning point from which there would be no return. What began as a promising opportunity in the green valleys of Uttarakhand would soon unravel into a story of greed, betrayal, and tragedy that would shake not only the resort, but the entire country. Ankita's disappearance began like a small ripple that quickly grew into a wave of panic. The morning she did not show up for work, some staff assumed she was unwell. Others thought she might have gone to visit her family. But when her absence stretched into the afternoon, the whispers began. Ankita was always punctual, always responsible, and she never left without informing someone. The resort had seen workers come and go, but something about this felt different. By evening, when she still had not returned, the staff quarters became tense. Her belongings remained untouched. Her phone lay switched off in her drawer, and her diary, usually hidden under her pillow, sat open as if she had been interrupted mid-thought. The first to raise the alarm were her colleagues, but Rahil Deshmukh, the manager, dismissed. He told them she must have taken a short break and would return soon. His explanation sounded rehearsed, too smooth to be convincing. Some workers exchanged uneasy glances, but none dared to challenge him openly. They knew Rahil's word was final, and questioning him often led to punishment or sudden dismissal. When Ankita's parents heard the news, they rushed to the resort, their hearts heavy with dread. They knew their daughter well enough to understand she would never disappear without telling them. Her mother's cries echoed in the courtyard as she pleaded with the staff to tell her what had happened. Some workers avoided her eyes, while others lowered their heads in silence. The weight of secrets hung thick in the air, but no one dared to speak the truth. The locals in the nearby village had also begun to notice strange activity. On the night Ankita vanished, several villagers claimed they had seen expensive cars rushing out of the resort gates. Long after midnight, a fisherman who lived by the river said he had heard raised voices carried by the wind, followed by a loud splash in the water. He told his neighbors but did not go to the authorities. Everyone in the area knew that the Khurana family's reach was powerful, and accusing them without proof could ruin lives. Inside the resort, tension grew as investigators from the local police were finally called. Inspector Kunal Rathore arrived, a man young in age, but sharp in his instinct. His first step was to examine the security cameras. The footage from the evening showed Ankita leaving her workplace near the garden, heading toward the back gate, but when he checked the next camera, the one that should have caught her walking toward the staff quarters, there was nothing. An entire hour of footage had gone missing. Kunal's sharp eyes narrowed. Technical malfunctions were rare, and the timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. He questioned Rahil, who insisted the cameras often failed, blaming the old equipment, but Kunal knew this was a lie. The rest of the night's recordings were intact. Only the section capturing Ankita's last movements was gone. This was not an accident, it was deliberate. The investigation also revealed that Ankita had been seen arguing with someone near the resort garden hours before she vanished. 2 staff members admitted to hearing raised voices, but refused to name the person. Their hesitation confirmed what Kunal already suspected. Ankita had crossed paths with someone powerful, someone the staff feared more than the law. As days passed without progress, anger grew among the villagers, and Ankita's family. Her father demanded answers, insisting the resort was hiding the truth. The media began to pick up the story, turning the peaceful image of the Horizon Resort into a place of suspicion and fear. Guests canceled bookings, and whispers spread like wildfire about what might have happened to the young woman who only wanted to work and build a future. What no one realized was that Ankita's disappearance was not random. She had stumbled into something she was never supposed to see. That night, when she walked away from the garden, she carried more than just her dreams. She carried knowledge that made her dangerous to those who thrived on secrecy. The river by the resort, calm and glittering under the sun, might already have been hiding the darkest truth of all. And as the days ticked by, the urgency to uncover it grew stronger, because with every passing hour, the chance of finding Ankita alive slipped further away. Inspector Kunal Rathore refused to be misled by the surface calm of the Horizon Resort. The case had already drawn local media attention, and pressure was building. Each time he stepped inside the resort's polished lobby, he could feel the weight of eyes on him. The staff kept their distance, their faces pale with fear, as if speaking even a single truth could cost them everything. But Kunal thrived on silence. He knew that fear often spoke louder than words. His first move was to revisit every corner of the resort that Ankita might have walked through on her last evening. He traced her steps from the garden, where she had been last seen, to the staff quarters, to the rear gate that led to the riverside. Each spot told him something, but the missing surveillance footage haunted him most. It was as if someone had carefully sliced a piece of time out of the story. Rahil Deshmukh continued to insist that Ankita had left voluntarily. He painted her as restless, ambitious, someone who might have abandoned her post in search of a better life. To outsiders, this explanation might have sounded plausible, but to Kunal it was nothing more than a carefully rehearsed lie. He had seen Ankita's room, her belongings left untouched, her half-written diary entry waiting for her return. No one walks away from their life mid-sentence. The inconsistencies grew sharper when Kunal interviewed the villagers. Many had small fragments of the night etched into their memories. One old man recalled headlights blazing down the winding road, after midnight, faster than anyone dared to drive in the hill. Another spoke of dogs barking wildly near the river, as if disturbed by human presence. The fisherman who had once hesitated finally admitted what he heard. Voices arguing by the water, then silence, followed by a splash heavy enough to shake the stillness of the night. These accounts painted a picture too vivid to be coincident. Back at the resort, Kunal's suspicions began to circle around three names: Viraj Khurana, the powerful owner; Rahil Deshmukh, the loyal manager; and two staff members whose behavior during questioning seemed nervous: Samar, Vedant, and Imran, Qureshi. Samar, a young man with a quick temper, avoided eye contact. Imran, older and quieter, fumbled with his answers, his hands trembling each time Ankita's name was mentioned. Kunal made note of every hesitation, every slip, knowing that lies left traces. The more Kunal pressed, the more he sensed resistance, not just from the suspects but from the environment itself. Phone records went missing, certain guest logs from that week were conveniently misplaced, and when he requested the resort's financial records, Rahil produced files so clean they looked freshly prepared. It was a cover-up, clumsy in places but dangerous in intent. Still, what disturbed Kunal most was the invisible wall of silence surrounding Viraj. Not a single staff member dared to mention his name directly in connection with Ankita's disappearance, but the fear in their eyes was answer enough. Meanwhile, Ankita's parents grew desperate. Her mother spent hours near the police station, begging for answers, while her father's grief turned into anger directed at the resort. The community rallied behind them, holding protests that blocked roads and demanded accountability. What had started as a missing person case was becoming a storm that threatened to shake the very foundations of those in power. Kunal, though burdened with pressure from both the public and his superiors, remained relentless. He pieced together small clues: the missing surveillance, the villagers' testimonies, the contradictory statements of staff. Together they hinted at one grim possibility: Ankita had not left of her own will. Something had happened within the resort, something violent and irreversible. The calm waters of the river that wound past the property seemed to mock the investigation, holding secrets beneath their surface. Each passing day without results only fueled the unrest. Kunal knew time was against him. If Ankita was alive, every delay reduced her chances. If she was not, then evidence was slipping further from reach. Yet he could feel it. There were cracks forming in the story carefully crafted by Viraj and his men. Someone would slip. Someone would eventually tell the truth. And when that happened, the facade of the Horizon Resort would collapse, revealing the darkness hidden beneath its luxurious image. The only question was whether Kunal would uncover the truth in time, or whether Ankita's story would be buried forever in silence. The breakthrough came when search teams were finally allowed to comb the river near the Horizon Resort. For days, the current had carried only silence, its surface glittering in the sunlight as if mocking the growing desperation of Ankita's family. Divers went down again and again, pulling up nothing but stones and debris. But then, on the fourth day, the water surrendered its secret. Ankita's body was discovered weighted down with rocks, tied crudely with rope, as if someone had believed the river would keep her hidden forever. The discovery shook the region. Crowds gathered along the banks, horrified whispers spreading like wildfire. Her disappearance had turned into a confirmed murder, and the community's grief transformed into fury. Inspector Kunal Rathore stood grimly at the river's edge, staring at the evidence of what he had long suspected. The marks on her wrists told him she had struggled. The bruises across her arms spoke of force, and the stones tied to her body confirmed premeditation. This was no accident, no impulsive act. It was deliberate. Whoever had done this believed they could silence her completely, but instead they had left behind the most damning proof. The investigation tightened around Viraj Khurana and his circle. Witness accounts revealed that on the night Ankita vanished, she had resisted an order to attend one of Viraj's private gatherings. These parties were infamous among the staff, though never openly discussed. Select employees were forced to attend, serving not only drinks but other unspoken demands. Ankita had refused, and that defiance sealed her fate. According to staff whispers, she had threatened to expose what was happening behind closed doors. To Viraj, whose empire was built on reputation and secrecy, this was intolerable. Kunal pieced together the chain of events. Rahil Deshmukh had been the one to corner her first, attempting to convince her to comply. When she resisted, Viraj himself was informed. Enraged at the threat, he ordered his loyal men, Samar, Vedant, and Imran Qureshi, to handle the problem. That phrase, vague to outsiders, was well understood within the resort. It meant silence her by any means necessary. What followed was a night of horror. Ankita was dragged toward the riverside, struggling and screaming but muffled by the darkness and the fear of those who heard yet did not intervene. The splash that villagers recalled had been the final act of violence. As these details came together, Kunal's case grew stronger. He secured Ankita's diary, its final pages filled with uneasy observations about Viraj's behavior and the pressure she felt at work. Though it did not mention his name directly, her words painted a clear picture of a toxic environment where silence was survival. Combined with the testimony of staff who, under questioning, admitted to missing surveillance footage and suspicious orders, the net began to close around Viraj. The arrest shocked the nation. Viraj Khurana, once seen as a symbol of success and charm, was led away in handcuffs. Rahil, who had stood by his side like a shadow, was taken as well, along with Samar and Imran. The sight of the powerful being treated as criminals ignited debates across the country about corruption, privilege, and the exploitation of the powerless. Media vans lined the roads near the resort, their cameras capturing every moment, while angry protesters demanded swift justice. But beneath the outrage, fear lingered. Many still believed Viraj's influence ran deep, that his wealth and connections could twist the case in his favor. Whispers circulated that Ankita had stumbled upon more than just immoral gatherings. Some suggested she had discovered financial dealings, hidden guests, or something that could have destroyed reputations far beyond Viraj. Whether true or not, the speculation added to the mystery, painting Ankita not only as a victim, but as a symbol of resistance against the powerful. The Horizon Resort, once a sanctuary for travelers, now stood as a crime scene. Guests abandoned their bookings, its reputation permanently stained. The gardens, the riverside, the polished lobbies, all became backdrops of tragedy. Locals avoided the grounds, saying the place carried a shadow too heavy to shake. For Kunal, the case was far from over. He knew arrests were only the beginning. Trials could drag on, evidence could be challenged, and powerful figures could attempt to bend the law. Yet he also knew the public was watching. Ankita's story had struck a chord across India, her name spoken in homes, offices, and classrooms. She was no longer just a missing worker. She was the face of a fight against corruption and silence. And though her life had been taken, her truth had surfaced with undeniable force, carried by the very river that was meant to bury her forever. The courtroom was packed from the very first day, the air heavy with tension, as the trial of Viraj Khurana, Rahil Deshmukh, Samar, Vedant, and Imran Qureshi began. Outside the gates, Protesters shouted Ankita's name, demanding justice, their placards lifted high like a wall of defiance against power and influence. Inside, Ankita's parents sat quietly in the front row, their grief etched across their faces, their eyes fixed on the men accused of taking their daughter's life. The trial was more than a legal proceeding, it had become a national spectacle, a test of whether justice could prevail against wealth and connections. The prosecution presented Ankita's diary as one of the central pieces of evidence. The words written in her careful handwriting revealed a young woman burdened by unease, describing an environment where she felt unsafe, where she felt pressured into things that went beyond her role as a staff member. Her last entries, hinting at her growing refusal to remain silent, became a haunting testimony from beyond the grave. Witnesses were called. Staff members who had once cowered in silence now took the stand. Some spoke with trembling voices, others with anger that had long been buried. They described missing surveillance footage, suspicious orders from Rahil, and the chilling fear of Viraj's wrath. Defense lawyers tried to paint Ankita as unstable, someone who had perhaps taken her own life, but the evidence tore their arguments apart. The bruises on her body, the stones tied to her limbs, and the testimonies of villagers who heard her final moments by the river left no room for doubt. The story of a voluntary disappearance was shattered. This had been a murder, carried out with intent, and everyone in the room knew. As the weeks stretched on, the cracks in Viraj empire grew deeper. More staff members, emboldened by the case's momentum, began to share what they knew. Stories of private gatherings, illegal dealings, and the pressure placed on workers surfaced like fragments of a larger puzzle. Each revelation painted the Horizon Resort, not as a place of peace, but as a den of exploitation, carefully disguised behind luxury walls. The public's anger only intensified, fueling daily coverage across television and newspaper. Ankita's name became a symbol of truth, her photograph displayed in homes and protests alike. Finally, after months of testimony and arguments, the verdict was delivered. Viraj Khurana was found guilty of orchestrating Ankita's murder. Rahil, Samar, and Imran were convicted for their roles in carrying out and covering up the crime. The announcement sent waves of relief through the courtroom, and outside, crowds erupted in chants of victory. Ankita's parents wept, holding each other tightly, knowing that while their daughter would never return, her voice had not been silenced. Justice, though delayed, had arrived, yet even with the convictions, shadows lingered. Rumors persisted that Viraj connections extended beyond the resort, reaching into politics and business. Some whispered that Ankita had uncovered secrets too dangerous to ever see daylight, secrets that might remain hidden forever. Questions lingered in the minds of many. Had the full truth truly been revealed, or had only part of a much larger story surfaced? For some, the trial felt like an ending, but for others it was only the beginning of a reckoning. The Horizon Resort was eventually shut down, its once bright gardens overgrown with weeds, its hallways echoing with silence. Locals avoided the property, claiming it carried an aura of dread, a place where innocence had been stolen. Travelers who passed by on their way to the valley spoke of the tragedy with hushed voices, as though the very land remembered what had happened. Ankita's story lingered in the air, carried by the wind that rustled through the trees and the water that continued to flow along the riverbank, where her life had been cut short. For Inspector Kunal Rathore, the case remained etched in his mind. He had solved many crimes before, but this one carried a weight unlike any other. It was not just about a young woman's murder. It was about a system that had allowed power to crush the powerless for too long. Ankita's courage in resisting what was demanded of her, her decision to stand against something wrong, had cost her everything. And yet, in death, she had sparked something larger than herself. A movement, a demand for accountability, a reminder that no amount of money or influence could bury the truth forever. In the end, the resort murder was not just a story of tragedy, but of awakening. It shook a community, rattled a nation, and forced people to confront the darkness that hides behind polished walls and charming smiles. Ankita's name lived on as both a warning and a beacon, a story retold in villages,
cities and homes across India. She had been one young woman with dreams, silenced too soon, but her legacy was a roar that refused to fade. The river that once tried to conceal her story had instead carried it across the country, ensuring that her truth would never be forgotten.